Thank you for tuning in today to this special episode of Liberty Cap Talk Live. We are on the air right now, and I believe I've actually reminded people to come into the show. Reminded everybody from last night's show that we will be having a special guest here, so they should be coming with us very shortly. So, with that said, we are going to be going to our first guest right now. Before I do, I just want to remind my listeners to wear your liberty caps. We are freeing ourselves from the control of the state. We are freeing ourselves from the control of the Republicans and Democrats. We're fighting them tooth and nail all the time, every day, no excuses. All right, so let's get right to our first guest here. He is a professor at Loyola University. He's also a writer, as well as a very big commentator in the libertarian movement. He wrote a fantastic book many years ago called Defending the Undefendable. And he's also has been a very big Ron Paul supporter during his campaign for the presidency in 2008. Please welcome our very good friend in the movement, Walter Block. Walter, are you with us?
I am, certainly, and thanks for having me, Todd.
Oh, no problem. No problem at all. Well, I guess for those who aren't familiar with you this time around, I guess I'm kind of curious. For those who are listening, exactly how did you wind up in the Liberty Movement?
Wow. Well, I was a pinko commie socialist Jew from Brooklyn, which is sort of a redundancy because all my family was, and pretty much all of Brooklyn was. And I went to Brooklyn College, and then I heard that Ayn Rand was coming to Brooklyn College to speak, and I came to boo and hiss her because she was evil, because she favored capitalism. And as we all knew, that capitalism was the source of all evil, and income maldistribution, starvation. Oh, yes, we all knew that. And I came and I listened to her, and I was filled with vitriol. But at the end of the session, they said that they were having a luncheon in her honor, and anyone could come, even if you disagreed. So I came because I wanted to get her even more. And there was a long, long table with Ayn Rand sitting at the head of it, and Alan Greenspan on the one side of her, and Nathaniel Brennan on the other, and Leonard Peikoff, and all the gang. And I was relegated to the foot of the table because all the big shots were at the other end. And I turned to my neighbor and I said, "What's this capitalism stuff? It's all evil." And he said, "Well, I really don't know, but the people who do are at the other end of the table." So I was a chutzpahnik in those days. I guess I still am. And I put my head between Ayn's and Nathan's, and I said, "There's a socialist here who wants to debate someone on socialism versus capitalism." And they said, "Who is it?" And I said, "Me." I was about 22 then. I was a senior at Brooklyn College. And Nathaniel Brennan was very kind and gracious, and he said, "Look, I'll come to the other end of the table and talk to you on two conditions. One, you promise not to allow the discussion to end with this one time, but we continue until we resolve it. And two, you read two books that I'm going to recommend to you." Well, he came to the other end of the table. He recommended Atlas Shrugged and Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. And we talked then, and I wasn't convinced, but I came to his house, and I think I was at Ayn Rand's apartment, or she was at his, I forget. And when Greenspan was there, and I think I brought my roommate to one of the sessions. But after 5 to 6 sessions, I was converted. I was a free enterprise or libertarian, and that's how I came to be roughly my position now, although it's changed a little bit since then.
Wow. You know, I guess a lot has changed in the liberty movement over the years. I mean, we've seen so many people, coming in and out. The Libertarian Party pretty much over the last 10, 15 years has changed dramatically. It's not the principal party as it used to be. Now, you had the election, you had basically the nomination of Bob Barr and Wayne Allen Roode. And then you had Ron Paul running for the presidency in 2008, which, whom you and I backed back in 2000 of last year. And now with, you've got people like Rand Paul and Peter Schiff running for office, and there's now talk of Ron again running for the presidency in 2012. Isn't this a really good sign that the liberty movement is really flourishing, particularly with the Free State Project and all?
Well, I guess I see both sides. On the one hand, Ron Paul is utterly and totally magnificent. By the way, we had him here speaking at Loyola University, New Orleans, and he had a stand-up crowd, and we had overflow rooms. He just packed a very large auditorium. It was just stupendous, and we've focused attention on Ron Paul here in New Orleans. That is certainly a positive. I mean, he'll go around in cities and he'll get the football fields full of people, 15, 20,000 of them. So Ron Paul is magnificent and wonderful, and that's a big, big positive. But Bob Barr really isn't libertarian. I mean,
right.
Bob Barr was asked, do you favor legalizing drugs? And he says, well, that's a state issue. I'm running for president. So they say, well, suppose you were running for governor of Georgia. Would you favor legalization of drugs? He says, well, I'm not running for Georgia governor. I'm running for president. In other words, he's trying to hide from the libertarian platform, which has been decimated in any case. So I'm not really that happy with the Libertarian Party. The Free State Project is good. The Mises Institute is magnificent. I'm heavily involved with their activities. We have this Mises University, and this year we had about 200 students over the summer. And when you come to Auburn, Alabama, where it's 99 degrees and 99 humidity in the middle of July or August, you're pretty dedicated. And
right.
So there are green shoots, if I can use that word.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there are brown shoots. So it's a step forward, a step back.
Right.
We keep pushing liberty and free enterprise and capitalism and private property rights and individual initiative and responsibility, and see what happens.
Right. I want to talk to you about your book that you wrote many years ago, and I read your book, Defending the Undefendable. And you basically, you were writing in one chapter about the slumlord. And you were basically making the case that slumlords have been vilified as the bad guy in a free market. And, you were, and basically, you were writing in here for one part here, and I'd like to quote from the book here. The owner of ghetto housing differs little from any other purveyor of low-cost merchandise. In fact, he is no different from any purveyor of any kind of merchandise. They all charge as much as they can. That's a very interesting statement. A lot of people would probably be asking the question, why would you be defending the slumlord? And because, some people have this view that all slumlords are terrible. And, I think slumlords are providing a service like any other commodity. There may be a few landlords out there that are horrible, and granted, that may very well be the case from a moral standpoint, but from an economic standpoint, they're just offering something that any other renter, if you will, is trying to provide a service to anybody out there who needs housing of some sort. Can you give us an idea exactly what you're going with us?
Yeah, well, first of all, there might be a few bad landlords. There are a few bad ice cream sellers and a few bad shoe salesmen and a few bad teachers and a few bad cops and a few bad judges. And there are a few bad people in every calling because there are a few bad human beings. So why shouldn't landlords have a few? Now, they're all more under rent control because then you dissipate the usual incentives on the part of suppliers to satisfy customers. Then you get more a disproportionate amount. But without rent control, they're just purveyors of low-cost housing. Slumlords are to luxury slumlords are to luxury landlords, as are McDonald's to luxury restaurants. They're just providing a low-cost, cheaper alternative, and there's nothing unique about that. Now, does everyone charge the highest price they can get? Sure. Look, you have a radio station. Didn't you try to get the highest wage that you could? Well, a wage is a price. I mean, I'm a professor. I try to get the most money I can. Most people, when they go bargain shopping, try to get the lowest price. In other words, when you're a buyer, you try to get the lowest price possible. When you're a seller, you try to get the highest price. There's nothing unique about that. Everyone does it. Just the lefties and the hippies and such like are saying that there's something wrong with slumlords doing this, but when they do it, like when they go buy their hippie beads, they try to get the best price for the hippie beads, and when they give some sort of drunken concert or poetry reading, they try to get the most money for that. So they're just being very hypocritical.
Right. Now, you were writing about prostitution, and I know that at one point, I think that's a very interesting subject you bring up here, is that, in a free market, we wouldn't have this problem where a lot of women would be subject to, say, abuse or rape in the black market, which in a real dangerous black market where you've got the pimps, and especially in the case of Nevada, for example, we see women out there who are subject to a lot of a lot of guys out there who are interested in their services, and these women are basically providing them a service that they ordinarily wouldn't get outside of the market. And the good thing about what happens in Nevada is that there are no pimps. Everything's legal. All you gotta do is be tested. But everywhere else in the United States, if you're trying to sell a service, say sex, and just for the service of satisfying your clients, unfortunately, it becomes vilified. Why do you think it's vilified so easily? Is it because of morality legislating these kind of matters, or is it because, well, we need to protect the public for public safety? I mean, do they go both hand in hand? What's your take on that?
Well, first of all, I'm sort of a vilifier myself. I'm not really a fan of prostitution. I don't propose it, promote it, indulge in it. I don't favor it. I don't want my daughter to do it, God forbid. So I'm not really a fan of it. What I'm doing in that book is saying whether it's moral or not, and I'm not really one that thinks it's moral. I think it's immoral. Should it be illegal? Which is a very different kind of a thing. As a libertarian, the only things that should be illegal, in my view, are violations of the NAP, the non-aggression principle. For example, murder, rape, theft, fraud, things like that. That's what the law should prohibit. If there's an initiation of violence that is not acceptable, one, voluntary sadomasochism between consenting adults also should be allowed. But if there's voluntary things that are immoral, like pornography or prostitution or addictive drugs or anything like that, we libertarians don't have to favor it. We can even oppose it. Although we could favor it, that's a different issue. But what unites all libertarians is saying that we should reserve the criminal law for people who initiate violence against non-aggressors or children or something like that. And voluntary prostitution between consenting adults is just another legitimate business. The feminists, the so-called feminists, really insult women by saying, well, it's per se an invasion or violence or something, but it's not.
Right.
It's shown by not only Nevada, but many countries in Europe where they have women in the shop windows, and, you can walk by and go in and avail yourself of the services sort of like of a barber or whatever. So I think that women would be much safer and more protected if we didn't have a black market. Why drop it underground? Why hassle women? Okay, maybe it shouldn't be out on the street corners, but that's a whole other issue, be assumed onto the streets. But why should they go to jail for voluntary consensual behavior? I mean, marriage, too, is voluntary consensual sexual behavior. You might as well ban marriage.
Right.
So as a libertarian, I think of the legalization of it, and I think as a utilitarian, I think society would be much better, and fewer women would be beaten up either by dons or by pimps if it were legal.
Right. I guess what's really interesting about this is that we have, for example, I know you covered drugs in your book too, and the war on drugs has been so, it's gotten to a point now where it's gotten so out of hand, where lives have been destroyed, where so many goddamn people are being thrown in prison just for the sake of, okay, we are going to punish you because you carried a little piece of pot or a little piece of plant, if you will, in your little back pocket or even in your front pocket or anywhere on your person. And next thing you know, we got to throw the book at you. We got to punish you because the minimum sentencing laws, and there's got to be a lot of plea bargaining along the way. We've got to be very tough on crime, and a lot of the Republicans love this mantra, and even so do the Democrats. I mean, the Democrats like to come off as like they're in favor of medical marijuana. Look at the Obama administration. I mean, he basically came out against medical marijuana of all people, and even though people were wondering about that particular issue where he was standing on. And now he's basically no different from George W. Bush on marijuana prohibition, except he's a little bit of a nicer, more attractive guy than Bush is. So
yes, well, Obama is more articulate than George Bush, but other than that, I don't see any real difference between them. They're both in Afghanistan, they're both in Iraq. I guess a Democratic war is different than a Republican war. But on the issue of drugs, it's particularly onerous for people living in New Orleans, which is, I think, got the highest crime rate now proportionate to population in the country. I'm not sure. It may be Detroit. But we're in the top 5. And what's happening, I read the Times-Picayune, which is the major newspaper here, and every week there's 2 or 3 young black men killing each other over drug turf wars. And this is horrible. I mean, every life is precious. These young men could be, if we had legalized drugs, could be pursuing a much more productive life, and they wouldn't be killed. I mean, they're shooting each other, and every once in a while there's an innocent bystander. No, they're innocent bystanders too. I correct myself. They're all innocent in a sense that they're victimized by this drug war. Look, it's got nothing to do with black people. When we had prohibition of alcohol, there were young Italian men or Italian-American men killing each other in Chicago and in New York and other places. They were fighting over alcohol turf. And we had all sorts of bathtub gin, and now you have bad alcohol, rather bad drugs. Lenny Bruce died not from an overdose, but from impure heroin. One of my heroes, Lenny Bruce.
Yeah.
So I think it's now, what is it, Portugal has legalized drugs, and there are several South American and Latin American countries that have legalized not just marijuana, but heroin and cocaine also. Years ago, Coca-Cola started with cocaine, and people would use heroin as for medicinal purposes. Now, I'm no chemist, I'm no pharmacist. I don't know if this is good for you or bad for you. I don't use heroin. I don't use marijuana. I wouldn't want my kids, my students, my friends to use it.
Right.
And no kids. I think children are always different for the libertarian and for everyone else probably. But I think what we should do is legalize this stuff. The reason that there's so much crime committed over it is because of the gigantic profits, but the reason for the profits is the prohibition. If the thing were legalized, the costs would come way, way down. I mean, marijuana and cocaine and heroin are like weeds. They're not like asparagus where you need care and feeding of them and whatever, and asparagus are relatively expensive. It's much more like, some sort of like hay or something. And the price would be very, very low, and then there'd be no vast, gigantic profits in it. And people wouldn't be attracted to it, or it'd be sold in pharmacies or special drug stores or whatever. See, the reason that they're losing the drug war, and the reason they'll never win the drug war, is every time they interdict a supply of something, and then there's less supply on the street, well, the price goes up, and if the price goes up, profits are higher, so it pulls more people in. It's a knowing situation. What we ought to do is declare victory and then end the war, legalize drugs like we legalize alcohol. Are there alcohol problems? Yes, there are alcohol problems. People, get drunk, but there's no crime around it. I mean, right now, the purveyors of beer, wine, and liquor and all that stuff, no one shoots anyone over it. Whereas if we legalized addictive drugs like marijuana, heroin, cocaine, nobody would shoot anyone over this, and I think that's a big gain. Plus, people wouldn't die from bad supplies of it. It would be a win-win situation. The only people who would lose, I guess, would be jailers, because there'd be fewer people in jail. In some cities, more than half of the inmates are really innocent, but they're guilty of these drug violations. And then the police could focus on real crime, like rape or murder or theft or things like that.
Right. I don't know if you heard about this, but President Obama decided to outlaw clove and flavored cigarettes. And this is the big problem that he's doing right now. He signed the Family Prevention and Tobacco Control Act, which basically gives the FDA far more broad sweeping powers to regulate tobacco. And I thought that was under the purview of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, but this is being done in the name of it's all for the children. And now, because of this, he wants basically do this because it's a public safety issue. Public safety, my fucking ass. And that's the problem though, because this is a problem where, this is a problem where he's now created a black market of clove and flavored cigarettes. And this was lobbied for by Philip Morris. Of all the tobacco companies, this was lobbied by these guys. And my thing is, this is the war on drugs now 3.0. Wouldn't you say?
3.0, I don't know what you mean by that.
Well, 3.0, it's an upgrade, like it's an extension,
Oh, I see what you mean, part 3 or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I agree with you entirely. I mean, cigarettes also are not good. I don't smoke. I think it causes cancer. I don't think it's a good thing. But the thing with the kids, for the children, yes, we love children. I mean, if we didn't, we wouldn't survive as a species. And I think there's nothing wrong with a prohibition of any of this stuff for children. I think it's child abuse to allow a child to pornography or prostitution or drugs or cigarettes or alcohol or any of that stuff. You don't want 6-year-olds involved with this, but we're talking adults now. Look, at people, these Obama Nicks and the Bush people, they're all big Democrats, and they're engaged in all sorts of wars to bring democracy. Look, if people are too stupid to make choices over whether they should smoke a cigarette or drink a beer or light up a marijuana cigarette, how come they become smart enough to be given the right to vote?
Right.
And if they're given the right to vote, should they be smart enough to, know whether to put stuff in their bodies? Look, we don't let children vote.
Right.
I think reasonably, a 6-year-old should be allowed to vote, or the way some of these adults are voting, I'm not sure about that.
Right.
But put that to the side. The point is that this paternalist nanny state is really incompatible with democracy. Not that I'm a fan of democracy. I mean, people won the democratic vote in Hong Kong.
Well, democracy is majoritarianism.
Yes, and you have paternity of the majority. But so I'm not a big fan of democracy. Alan Toppy had this beautiful book, Democracy, the God That Failed, which I highly recommend. But they like democracy. And if they like democracy, how can they reconcile this with the nanny state that they're perpetrating, where they're treating adults like children? I mean, as I say, if adults are so stupid that they need to be told for their own good to, not eat fatty foods and pretty soon they'll ban fatty foods at the rate we're going, how can we entrust them with the vote? In Canada, if you ride a bicycle, you have to have a helmet on.
Right. I know.
Pretty soon the U.S. is going to do that, and then the next step will be if you walk, you have to have a helmet because, you could fall, and maybe when you go to bed, you have a helmet because if you fall out of bed, you hurt your head. I mean, where do we stop this this lunacy, this craziness, which is logically incompatible with their philosophy of democracy.
Right. You were talking about also, one other thing I want to talk about in your book was that you were talking about the libeler and the slanderer. Mm-hmm. And the reason I bring this up is because just recently, former Miss California, Carrie Prejean, who actually was Miss USA as well, she was runner-up to winning that spot. She basically is now suing the Miss California organization for libel, slander, and religious discrimination. And she's using Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act to basically make the case that, well, you know, the people holding the entire event, because she was never supposed to talk about God at this, you know, at this event. I don't know why religion and politics has to be talked about in a pageant. I mean, that's all it's supposed to be, is showing off beauty and not mouth off about your platitudes on your religious and political beliefs. But the question I find is, you know, you can't really sue for slander, but you can sue for libel. And
could you tell me what she's suing them over? I'm not familiar with the case.
She's also suing them for religious discrimination.
Well, on the grounds of what? Did she mention God and they kicked her out or something?
Well, because she basically, I guess this is somewhat kind of like in retaliation against them for because she was asked whether she believed in gay marriage, if she believed in you know, gays having the same right, the equal protection to marry, and she said no. I believe that gay marriage is defined as a marriage between a man and a woman, and she was using that under her religious beliefs. And the next thing you know, the whole dominoes fall from there, and now she is basically saying that, well, they used my medical privacy information and spelled it out to the public about my breast implants, and she's also suing them on that grounds. My case is, do you think she really has a case whatsoever? I mean, and you were talking about this in your book, that, you know, slander and libel shouldn't be demonized. It shouldn't be criminalized.
Yes. Well, first let me just talk about the gay marriage issue, which is peripheral to the libel and slander, because you mentioned it. My view is that gays should not be married by the state, and the state should have nothing to do with gay marriage. They shouldn't allow gay marriage, but they shouldn't allow heterosexual marriage either. In other words, we should have a separation between state and marriage, just as we want to have a separation between church and state, between education and state, between marriage and state, everything in state. We should just separate the state from society. The government should have nothing to do with this. Marriage should be a contract between consenting adults, and it should be sort of like a business partnership, only it's a business partnership with other aspects to it. So the government should have nothing to do with this. And gay people and, I don't know, all sorts of other combinations, heterosexuals, homosexuals, would be treated in the libertarian society in the same way. Namely, they should all have contracts, whatever contracts they want. Okay, now that we've dealt with the gay marriage issue, let's talk about libel and slander. I think slander is speech, libel is writing, but what it is I now say Todd is a bum, he's a commie, he's a pervert, he's a widow, whatever. Right. And I'm not seriously doing this, so don't sue me, Todd. I'm just using this as an example. Now, the view of this is, well, what I've just done is I've besmirched your reputation. Now people won't be your friend because I said you're a bum. And for that, I would sue you on those statements. No, I really wouldn't. But still. But yeah, this is just hypothetical. So the analysis on the part of the people who favor libel and slander prohibitions is, what I did is I stole your reputation. It's equivalent to if I stole your coat. And we all know what would happen to me if I stole your code. I'd be branded a thief and I'd go to jail, I'd have compensation or whatever. And your reputation is probably more important than any one code of yours. I mean, what's a code? $100 or something? Your reputation is worth a lot more than that. And I stole it from you. Well, the analysis that I use in the book Defending the Indefendable, which I got from Murray Rothbard, who is my mentor, was the following. Look, if you really look carefully at what a reputation is, paradoxically, you, Todd, do not own the Todd reputation. Rather, the Todd reputation consists solely of our thoughts about you. Your reputation does not exist, so to speak, in you. It exists in our minds.
Right. And in other words, I don't have any right or control of how you view me that forms the basis of that reputation. Basically, if I earn a good reputation, I earn it because I've done, something that gave you a good impression of me. But if I've done something that gives me a bad impression, I earn a bad reputation because I've earned that view of yours. So this whole idea that you have this collective right to a reputation, it just seems. It seems very silly and idiotic to me that
Yes, I agree. There was an instance, I gave a speech at Loyola University, Baltimore, and it was on race and sex, and at Loyola University, New Orleans, my own place, was this diversity task force that criticized me and called me a racist and a sexist on the grounds of the speech I gave in Baltimore.
I heard about that.
Yes. Isn't that horrible?
Yeah, that was horrible.
I mean, and not only did they do it on the basis of not hearing the speech, but they couldn't and didn't even specify anything that I said that was wrong. They just said, Block is a racist, sexist, pig, or whatever.
And they couldn't even back up that statement. So.
No, absolutely not. And my friends all urged me to go sue them for libel and maybe sue the university for libel, and I would love to. And I feel very aggrieved by them for attempting to ruin my reputation, but unfortunately and unhappily, if I want to be a consistent libertarian, I really can't sue them. I probably shouldn't tell them this, but what the heck? Truth is truth. So I really can't sue them, but I'm now involved in a grievance procedure against them within the rules that govern Loyola University, New Orleans. So I don't know what's happening with that. We'll see, but. It seems very weird to condemn a fellow academic without giving any evidence that he did anything wrong. So just on non-substantive grounds, they're weird. And, it sort of angers me a bit, but I can't sue them on the grounds of libel or slander because my reputation consists of what other people think of me, and I don't own other people's thoughts, so it's not as if you stole something from me.
Right. I wanted to move into something that I think is very important here, which is about the Ron Paul for President 2008 campaign and a lot of the work that he's doing for Campaign for Liberty. I think a lot of people were, very. I guess there was a lot of, on one hand, there were some successes and some failures of the Ron Paul campaign, and a lot of the people were very disappointed. The fact that the Ron Paul revolution didn't succeed the way that they would have liked to, because a lot of people who were exposed to Ron's message eventually went to vote for Obama. You had a lot of people there who basically said, you know what, we're not going to vote for John McCain, but we're going to vote for Obama because he represents the change that we need. And since Ron's out of the picture, since he can't be that change that he wants, now that we've got this African-American president who, by all accounts, is the first African-American president to be president of the United States, and yet people are now disappointed and disillusioned with what this man has done in terms of change. We might as well have had John McCain in office and not Barack Obama. Do you think that the Ron Paul campaign has had some successes and some great failures? And if so, what would your thoughts on those successes and failures be?
Well, I hate to confess this, but I favored Obama. I thought, what's his name, the libertarian guy was despicable. We've already discussed him.
Oh, you mean Bob Barr?
Bob Barr. I thought he was just despicable. I couldn't support him. I mean, he was just a hypocrite and horrible. Although I suppose he would have been a better president than Obama. But I
wrote him for Ron Paul, but go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm talking in the presidential election when Ron Paul's not running. I favored Obama over McCain because I thought Obama would be more for peace, that he would get out of Iraq. And, instead he's still in Iraq. He's increasing in Afghanistan. So I'm mea culpa. I supported Obama like an idiot. But, when the choices are so grim, McCain probably would have nuked somebody by now. So maybe Obama's better. I don't know. It's hard to know what crazy McCain would have done. But I regard the Ron Paul 2008 initiative is just magnificent. The only problem with it is that he didn't win. I mean, if he would have won, he would have, I don't know if he would have beat Obama if he had gotten the Republican nomination, but it's, even if he didn't win, he would have publicized libertarianism even more. Look, getting back to our recent visit of Ron Paul in New Orleans, we filled up a gigantic auditorium that nobody else pretty much, Obama could probably fill it up, and maybe Clinton, either Clinton could, but very few people could fill up these gigantic auditoriums, and Ron Paul is one of them. So he's a magnificent human move in terms of promoting liberty and free enterprise and the anti-Fed campaign that he's doing and the drug war. I mean, Ron Paul has been front and center on every important issue pretty much for libertarians, and he's got, 200 supporters in Congress for his audit the Fed, which is great because the Fed is, spilling up the economy. So I can't say enough good about Ron Paul. I just hope he runs in 2012, and he's still active. He spoke. He was very vigorous. I think he's 73 or 74 years old now. He'll be 76 in 2012. Well, he's a very young 74 or 73 or whatever he is now. He's in great shape. He spoke he told me right before I introduced him, I invited him, he told me he usually speaks for 35, 40 minutes, but the audience was so enthusiastic that he went on for 65 minutes. And not only did he have teleprompters like certain presidents, I won't mention the name, Obama, but he didn't even have notes. He just stood behind the podium and orated for an hour and 5 minutes, and he was interrupted constantly by applause. He got several standing ovations. He's just he's a man as far as libertarianism is concerned, and I doubt that
and he's also coming out with a new book called "End the Fed," and I think and he is just. I just already ordered it, and it's already going on the best-selling top list already. It's on its way, and at the rate it's going, I think the ideas are even much hotter and even more popular than they were in 2007 or 2008. I think I'm seeing evidence of this. I believe that Ron Paul's books are just off the press. I mean, people just cannot get enough copies of his book, and it's just becoming a very huge bestseller now. So I'm kind of interested in seeing how the book does well, and also I guess my disappointment with Ron was, we all know that because of the whole thing on the newsletter controversy, that kind of sort of happened, and that that was bound to happen sooner or later. And of course, you've had some people were complaining that he was getting donations from certain groups like Stormfront, and you've had some people who were basically saying that he wasn't extremely 100% principled on libertarian issues like immigration and abortion, for example. But, I really didn't care 100% if he was that principled on those issues. It was the overarching message that meant something. I mean, if anything, Bob Barr was even far worse on more issues than Ron Paul ever was. Bob Barr kept, using the libertarian moniker, if you will, and kept sticking to it. And people thought, oh my God, okay, so you're a libertarian, therefore you must be a supporter of Bob Barr. No, I'm not.
No, you're quite right. I agree with you. Bob Barr was really despicable. Look, if you get 10 libertarians in a room, you're probably going to get 11 opinions on most issues, because libertarians are sort of like trying to herd cats. It can't be done. We're very unique and individualistic, and we think for ourselves. Murray Rothbard used to say every dog gets one bite, everyone can have one or two deviations. I agree with you. Ron Paul is wrong on abortion and he's wrong on immigration, although there are many very eminent libertarians who support him on both of those things. And those are very, very complex issues, very complex philosophical issues, those two. But on the main things, on war and peace, on drugs, on free enterprise economics, Ron Paul is 100% libertarian. Now, this business of the newsletters and the standpoint, a lot of that was promoted by the inside the Beltway libertarians, the Cato Institute, and other groups in the Beltway, who really despised Ron Paul because he wasn't cosmopolitan enough. And I don't know what cosmopolitanism has to do with libertarianism. Look, the Cato Institute was talking about Fred Thompson and Rudy Giuliani as free enterprises. I think that the Cato Institute was almost worse than Bob Barr in terms of losing their libertarian credentials or losing their libertarian compass.
Right.
I mean, here you have Ron Paul, who's 99.9% libertarian, and you ignore him or you criticize him as being racist or something like that, and you have Fred Thompson and Rudy Giuliani, who on a scale of 1 to 100 libertarianism, give it a 5 or a 3 or something. I mean, they're just fascist socialists. And the Cato Institute is ignoring Ron Paul or attacking him and promoting these other fascist socialist Republicans. It's just despicable. It's interesting. And here's a I don't know what it's a criticism I have of Ron Paul. But after the election, the Cato Institute invited him to speak, and he accepted.
Yeah.
He has a very short political memory. He doesn't, remember enemies. He doesn't have an enemies list. So I guess I'm ambivalent on this. I admire him, and on one hand, and on the other hand, I wonder if I would go to the Cato Institute if they trashed me. I'm not sure I would. Maybe Ron's a better man than I am. I don't know. I'll have to think about that. But this attack came from within the libertarian movement, which is...
Yeah, it did.
The despicableness of it was even worse than Bob Barr, practically. So if there's a lower rung in hell, Bob Barr gets a real low one, and Cato gets one right below that.
Yeah, I think Bob Barr was so despicable on so many issues. I mean, when I was hosting... I was co-hosting with a couple of friends of mine on the Peace, Freedom, and Movement Prosperity radio show. And I had Bob Barr, and we were actually interviewing Bob Barr, and because I'm a practicing Wiccan, okay, so I asked him about a question about something that he did over 10 years ago regarding the Fort Hood incident, which is a little incident where, Bob Barr basically said, okay, there was an incident that happened at Fort Hood involving this group. Can you please tell me what that was all about? And he goes, what? And then he goes, well, I couldn't care less if you're Wiccan or not. Let's talk about substantive issues. And I was trying to get him to answer the question and see what his thought was on. What was it on? And he decided to dodge that question. And I knew right from there, because I wanted to hit him with the hard questions like, why did you back off on libertarian principles? Why did you of all people, make promises that you're going to get $40 million for your campaign when we knew that was ridiculous from the start. And the second that he answered my question, I knew I couldn't get him to answer the other question, so I backed off on that. So I think that's why Bob Barr is despicable. He's what he's doing in the libertarian movement is beyond me. But you know, I'm an open tent libertarian guy like you, Walter. But you know, there's a line where I go where I say, okay, if you're in the movement and you want to be exposed to liberty message, that's great. But if you come into the movement, don't expect to change us when you're going to find yourself that needs to be changed. And we're not going to change ourselves just to suit you.
I agree with you entirely. Bob Barr was horror, and I hope he stays a long way away from the Libertarian Party. But what happened is he came with 200 or 300 paid delegates.
Right.
And I think he bought that nomination.
Right.
I think the old-time Libertarians favored Mary Ruart.
Right.
And I think that, you know, maybe the Libertarian Party should say that you can't vote unless you've been in the Libertarian Party for, I don't know, 5 or 10 years or something
Right.
like that, which would eliminate these fly-by-night Libertarians who swoop in with hundreds of paid people and they all vote. So I don't know what's going to happen in 2010 with the elections there, whether, what's his name, Rand Paul will do well, or the guy in Connecticut, Schiff. Well, you know, I looked at their websites and I was a little perturbed by both of their websites. Schiff had nothing on his website about any views on anything except economics, which was good. And Rand Paul, what did Rand Paul? Rand Paul said that he was against the war in Afghanistan because, what was it? It wasn't voted for by the Congress, and he figures the Constitution, which is wrong. Paul's point that the only wars that are justified are wars that are declared, and Congress is supposed to do that. And Congress didn't declare any war against Afghanistan, so what are we doing there? And that's a perfectly reasonable Ron Paul point of constitutionalism. But then he said that if it was a vote, he would have voted to go to Afghanistan and have a war against them. Which I don't really see as the exact libertarian point of view. I mean, Afghanistan would attack us. People who got us in 9/11 were mainly Saudi Arabians. I think he had 9/11
Right.
attacker or Saudi. So, you know, should we declare war against Saudi Arabia? That's a little crazy. It's sort of like Janet Reno, who's responsible for the deaths of Waco. I don't know what state she's in, but should we declare war against that state? I mean, you know, it's just a little silly. So, I mean, and in any case, 9/11 was a blowback. 9/11 was not the initiation of aggression against the U.S. It came after a massive aggression of the United States against the rest of the world. And as Ron Paul said in his visit to New Orleans, every time we drop a bomb with a drone on 20 people, we create enemies who will come after us for the next decades.
What is your thought on Campaign for Liberty?
I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. What is your thought on Campaign for Liberty? I think it was a great idea when it was first announced, but it's turned into more of a money collection organization, and I'm not really happy with, you know, this progress of Campaign for Liberty. I think, you know, I'm wondering, what are they doing with that money? And I've been wondering about this for a while. I've been kind of, you know, let down about this. Because, you know, yeah, they're carrying on Ron's message, which is great, but by the same token, I guess I'm not too overly critical, but I'm critical to the point where I'm wondering, you know, why should I donate a dime of my money if I have no idea what you're actually spending it on? So I'm kind of wondering what kind of, I mean, you're just sending out letters, you're just urging people to call your congressman. I mean, exactly what is Campaign for Liberty doing? And
I think they're supporting people like Rand Paul. And by the way, if I criticize him stupid, doesn't mean I don't fear him. I'm wildly in favor of him. You know, when you look to the political movement, I mean, compare Rand Paul to his opponents, and it's just, it's just a comparison. Rand Paul is head and shoulders over anyone else, and Irwin Schiff also. And I think the Campaign for Liberty is supporting that. It's supporting Ron Paul. Usually when we get speakers into rolling, we have to pay from 2 to 5 to 10,000. Ron Paul came in for free, and we took out the dinner. We even offered to pay for the dinner, so we didn't let him, but that's another issue. So I think some of the money, the money is going for good purposes. I contribute to the Campaign for Liberty, not as much as I campaigned to the money bond when I thought he had a chance at the presidency. So I'm not against that. I think, I trust Ron Paul with my life, my sacred honor, or whatever. And if he's behind that, I'm sure it's being used for good purposes. And I think some of the purposes are getting Ron Paul around the country. And I tell you, there's not much better that you can do to get Ron Paul around the country. By the way, Ron Paul is also a big supporter of Mises Institute. He was, I think, part of the board of directors. I'm not sure about that, but he was in on it from the beginning of it. He speaks at the Mises Institute. As far as I'm concerned, the Mises Institute is to the last best hope of humanity, but close to it. So I'm not against the Campaign for Liberty. I'm a supporter of it.
Yeah. I know we're kind of sort of running short on time here, but I wanted to ask you about your thoughts on this whole public option nonsense. The public option, Obama's, national health insurance thing.
Oh, that.
Yeah, and this is now because of all the debates and everything. Now that Obama supporters are framing it as, well, if you're against the public option, then you must be a racist who is the pawn of these special interest organizations and whatnot, or you must be a shill for big pharma and big insurance. What's your take on Obamacare, and what do you think is going to come out of that?
Oh, it's just socialized medicine, and, socialism doesn't work, and I don't see why it would work with socialized medicine. Socialism didn't work in the USSR. It didn't work in North Korea. They're stopping there. It didn't work too well in Cuba. I don't see why it's going to work in, 15-20% of the U.S. economy is the health care. And, it's just socialism. Have we learned nothing from the fall of the Berlin Wall? Have we learned nothing from the belly up of the Soviet Union? Look, if we had free access in medical care, the whole problem would go away. I mean, the major reason we have such problems is these medical care is so expensive, and one of the reasons it's so expensive is we have restrictions on entry of doctors. The AMA tightly limits the supply of doctors. They don't allow students to come in they try to stop foreign doctors from coming into the country and practicing. Doctors make inordinate high amounts of money, which I don't mind. I'm not against high profit, but not when it comes about by artificially restricting entry. Look, suppose you and I, Todd, started medical school, and we hired some good doctors to be the teachers, and we skin 1,000 new entrants. You know what would happen to them, Todd? We'd go to jail. Because we're not allowed to do that.
I know. And that's bullshit because...
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, because, it's particularly with, the fact is that, we only have 500,000 doctors in this country that are AMA licensed. We have over 300 million Americans. We don't have enough care to provide for every sick American out there who really needs that care. They need medical attention of some sort, and unfortunately, we're basically creating a system where either we accept things as they are, the status quo, meaning the insurance companies. I'm not necessarily a fan of the current insurance market as it is, or we accept what's being proposed on the table, which is Obamacare, and something that Mark Edge and Ian Freeman talked about on Free Talk Live. They offered the impossible suggestion, the impossible solution, which is to get the government out of it entirely. But the only reason it's impossible is because the government won't allow itself to be taken off that entire schedule completely. So
if Ron Paul were president, what we'd do is we'd have a free enterprise system of medicine, and medicine would be very cheap, and the whole problem would go away. Look, if we have right now there's no refrigerator problem, but if somehow they passed a law that you couldn't make refrigerators and refrigerators started costing an arm and a leg, we'd have a refrigerator crisis, and then there'd be some Americans that wouldn't have the refrigerator insurance and yak. This is a crisis that's been created by government. It's a government crisis. The solution is not more government. The solution is less government, and the best solution is no government at all.
Right. The call-in number, really quick. If you have a quick question for him, please do so now at 646-652-4504. Again, that's 646-652-4504. You know, one last question I wanted to ask you, Walter, before we get anybody on the air here. And if we do end up getting somebody on the air here, we'll have you on for maybe a minute over. But the question I wanted to ask you was the recent House passage of the cap and trade bill. You know, this idea that, you know, we need to go green. You know, we need to basically protect the environment. You know, this whole move towards, you know, outlawing global warming, or actually averting global warming, if you will. And we need to, and basically this is going to raise the price of gasoline and everything up by $1. And my question for you is, isn't this another example that Congress refuses to read the bills like they did with the cap and trade bill?
Yes, I think, you know, we talk about the hypocrisy of Bob Barr, the hypocrisy of the environmental movement. Well, we could spend a whole hour on the environmental movement. Let me just say that they call them watermelons because they're green on the outside, but commie red on the inside. They just want to ruin our lives. You know, it used to be in the 70s, the lefty environmentalist types were talking about global cooling. Global cooling was the enemy. But then we didn't have global cooling, so they came out against global warming. And now what's happening is half their colleges that they jet to all over the world had it canceled because of freezing weather. So they're no longer talking about global warming. Now what they're talking about is global change. This way, whether it gets warmer or colder, it's capitalism itself. If there gets global change, that means that they think that the temperature is now optimal, but they don't see that. I mean, this is just another socialist endeavor like Obamacare, another way of promoting that which felt so dismally in North Korea, East Germany, and the Soviet Union.
Right. I guess one final bonus question is for you, Walter. What is the future outlook for liberty right now and for this country?
Well, there's positive, there's case for the positive, and case for the negative. I think the case for the positive is Ron Paul and the Mises Institute and all of the economics department of Laurel University in New Orleans, which is very, very, very free enterprise. So if you're a high school student, think of coming down a lot, study with us. There's Obama and socialism and the Republican Party, with the exception of Ron Paul, Democratic Party. So I think the case for liberty is mixed. There are some green shoots and then there are some brown shoots.
Thank you very much, Walter. It was great to have you on the air with us. You're welcome to come back anytime.